Shana Tova. Thank you so much for having me be a part of your Rosh Hashanah celebration. And thank you also for being part of our national movement. The Jewish secular community of Asheville is now affiliated with the Society for Humanistic Judaism, which is the umbrella organizing body of humanistic Judaism in North America. And I very much look forward to one day visiting your community. I think the COVID version of next year in Jerusalem is next year in person. So I hope for that. I hope it's next year. Today, as mentioned, I want to talk about what the high holidays mean for people who are Jewish and secular humanistic. There are so many themes in the high holidays that provide meaning for humanistic Jews. And one of them is the way we use the holidays to reflect on the past and look toward the future. With a new Jewish year, it's time to look back on the year that just ended to consider, how did we do as individuals and as a community? And to look forward to the upcoming year and how we might do better. And this happens to some degree during the secular New Year, when we may make resolutions about getting back into the gym or quitting a bad habit. But the Jewish New Year is really asking ourselves something much deeper, which is, what kind of people are we? Does our behavior toward others match up with who we see ourselves as and who we want to be? All of this is still relevant to secular and humanistic Jews. I also think the Jewish New Year connects us not just to this one past year, but all the way back into Jewish history and to our family and ancestry. We just heard some liturgy that said, out of a desire to be part of an ancient holiday and in appreciation of its meaning and its symbols, all of us must consider the value of past generations. The Jewish year is now 5781. And even though my family tree only goes back 5 or 6 generations on either side before I don't know the names of my ancestors, I do imagine those unknown relatives counting the Jewish years, and having done so since the Middle Ages, when this year numbering system went into wide use. But as we reflect on what the past means for us today and how we can do better in the future, we also have to find a balance between what still works for us in terms of belief and finding meaning. Some Jews still believe this 2,000-year-old notion that the number of the Jewish year represents the age of the earth, literally. And while that's only a very small percentage of Jews who would argue that, they're the segment that many other people look to as most observant, or even worse perhaps, most authentic. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Jews, probably 90%, believe in earth science and understand that when our ancestors came up with that number, they didn't have the same information that we do today. And this Jewish numbering system of the years is just one example of hundreds that demonstrate how the 90% of Jews are constantly balancing their humanistic ideals, like trusting science, with their relationship to religion. Too often, this spectrum is portrayed as religiously Jewish on one end and completely assimilated on the other. But that's false. It's not assimilation into nothingness on the other end of the belief spectrum. It's other positive values. For example, I don't believe that the Jews are God's chosen people. And my rejection of that part of Jewish theology is not replaced with nothingness or non-Jewishness or believing someone else is more chosen than the Jews. I replace the chosenness theology with humanism and universalism. And I'm proud of those positive values that say all people are equal and every person is of infinite value. Now, much of liberal religious Judaism kind of backfills the story to claim that the equality of all people is compatible with the religion, was always in there. They make Torah references like we're all created in God's image. But ultimately, for me, I see a clash of ideology, because how can you be both God's one chosen people and still be no better than anybody else? You know, something has got to give. And many, many Jews in Reform and Reconstructionists and even conservative Judaism would agree about their rejection of chosenness. And Reconstructionism dropped it completely. So they're all moving these balance sliders, you know, like on your old hi-fi stereos. Do you remember? I used to love playing with those things. Between, religious Judaism or Jewish particularism on one end and humanism or universalism on the other. And we can map pretty much every aspect of Jewish thought and belief through these equalizers. And maybe none of us, even on this call, would have sliders in the exact same place. So this is the work of humanistic Judaism, to bring forward the wisdom and meaning from the Jewish tradition in ways that are still useful and relevant to folks who, for most of us, have our beliefs and value sliders much closer to the humanistic and universalist side of things. In observing the Jewish holidays, and particularly the high holidays, we can highlight the humanistic threads that can be drawn out of much of the theology and certainly the history and practice of Jewish life. For example, with repentance and apology, even in an Orthodox understanding of it, true repentance requires asking forgiveness from the people you wronged. Praying to God for forgiveness was always only relevant for the sins you committed against God. And luckily for humanistic Jews, we don't believe any of the sins against God are actual sins. We're okay with it if you want to eat a succulent lobster on Yom Kippur. We don't abide by the laws of kashrut. We're okay with it if you want to spill your seed on the ground. And if you don't get that reference, talk to me afterwards. Secular Jews take the Lord's name in vain all the goddamn time. So these are all sins against God, and I don't feel the need to apologize to God for it. I understand if you do. Sins against our fellow man, however, or transgressions or wrongs, we've all done that in this past year. And so for humanists, apologies are only ever going to be of value if they're between and among humans. And I'm glad that that's actually built into our religious tradition as well. The genuine apology is an incredibly powerful and difficult aspect of repentance. The most obvious way humanistic Judaism adapts Jewish rituals and traditions to our modern sensibility is through the liturgy. And I hope this doesn't come as a shock to anyone at this point in the service, but the first time God was mentioned was when I just did it a moment ago. The non-theistic liturgy of humanistic Judaism allows us to focus on the human experience. When Rabbi Sherwin Wein created humanistic Judaism nearly 60 years ago, he didn't move those sliders over from religious Judaism to nothing or non-Jewish or anti-religion. He moved it to humanism. The traditional liturgy he was trained to use in Reform Seminary wasn't an authentic expression of his beliefs. And by switching to words that match our beliefs, we not only still benefit from the underlying humanistic values and our historic connection to the Jewish holidays, we demonstrate authenticity and integrity about who we are and what we do believe. So as you go through the liturgy, I think you'll find that because the words are about our experience as people, it universalizes the meaning. And it works not just for secular Jews, but for our friends and family members who may have their sliders at various points along the religious spectrum. And we want to welcome and serve people who may be in various places along the religious spectrum. Ultimately, though, humanistic Judaism provides a space, a safe space, for those who are secular, humanistic, atheist, agnostic, freethinker, skeptic, spiritual, not religious, to say what we mean and mean what we say, when literally every other Jewish denomination is utilizing the traditional liturgy and asking us non-theistic Jews to just go through the motions or make the words you disagree with mean something different for you. And some secular Jews are fine with that because it's the same words their ancestors used, so they feel connected to it, even if they don't believe it. And that's fine if it works for you. For me, this is about finding meaning. And I think that that kind of secular Jew is a decreasing percentage particularly as the percentage of secular people in the US continues to climb. And that brings me to one final way that I find meaning as a humanistic Jew during the high holidays. It's not only about updating or repurposing from the past into something meaningful for the present. It's about modeling the glorious secular future that I'd like my children to live in, and about finding the roles that Jews can play in bringing that about. Because for me, secularity and humanism are positive, world improving ideologies. And therefore, humanistic Judaism is on a mission. Secular Americans are still the minority, and we are still in some ways marginalized. That's starting to shift with the demographics. And today, nearly a quarter of all Americans say they are not affiliated with any religion. Yet there's currently only one openly secular member in all of Congress. It is still a political liability to be openly secular. And we've got to change that. And we need friends and allies to support us and recognize our marginalization and our need for inclusion. So these high holidays allow me to be open and bold and proud about what I do believe in. And what I do believe in is in the human responsibility to make positive change and the human power to do so without expectation of supernatural intervention. And even though it may not feel like it at times, secularism is on the rise in America, and we should encourage that and be actively working toward it and be a voice on behalf of like-minded Jews to the Jewish community and beyond, to let them know that we are proudly Jewish and proudly secular, and we need your involvement and your support to do it. Yesterday, the world lost a giant in Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who I'd argue was one of the most important Jews to ever live. And she dedicated her life to the cause of equality. We're unfortunately not there yet for too many people who are still not treated equally. But we continue to do the work, and now we do that work in her memory. And I'd argue that there's no life philosophy that values equality more than secular humanism. And that's why I'd like to see more of it. And it's the vision I bring with me into this new year. And I hope this coming year will be a way better year for all of us. Thank you. So I will see if there are any, I don't see any questions in the chat, but I've got time and I can just ramble on indefinitely if you'd like me to. Much rather hear from folks and get your reactions, concerns. Who's the secular Congress member? It is, I'm gonna get it. He's on the tip of my tongue. Jared Huffman from Northern California is openly non-theistic. Jamie Raskin is a congressman from Maryland who is Jewish and calls himself a humanist, but hasn't flat out come out as secular. And the two of them co-founded the Free Thought Caucus in Congress. So you know that congressmen create these caucuses based on interests. And so it was only 2 years ago that these two congressmen created a Free Thought Caucus. It's now up to, I think, 16 or so members, which is wonderful. And basically, you don't have to be a free thinker to be in this caucus. You just have to care about serving free thinkers. So it's been a lovely development. But again, you know, I look at, for example, Kamala Harris is of mixed religious descent. She's married to a Jew. Nobody's going to ask them on the campaign trail, what do they really believe? And if they were asked that, she'd have to dodge it to maintain electability. So that's the challenge that we still face in some ways, you know, and I'd like to see that changed. I'd like to see us be on equal footing with folks who are very comfortable in our country speaking openly about their belief. And we had Jamie Raskin interviewed in our Humanistic Judaism magazine an issue or two ago, and I hope that you are all receiving our emails now and saw that we did just put out another issue of Humanistic Judaism magazine. If you are a member here in Asheville, I'm in Brooklyn, but where you are in Asheville, if you're a member of the community there, you are also a member of the Society for Humanistic Judaism. So if you're not receiving our information, please be in touch, because I really want you to be a part of this movement. We also have an event coming up this Tuesday with 9 of our humanistic rabbis Tuesday evening. And again, if you haven't seen that invite, please let me know, because I think it's going to be a really spectacular event, and they're going to speak to these issues much more articulately than I have. So question: secular Jews open to non-Jews. Does your mission statement desire to gain a greater amount of secular Jews? Look, my goal is to just let the existing secular Jews know that there's this thing called humanism. I don't know how many of you remember when you first heard of humanism, but I was well into adulthood when I saw that philosophy. And when I did, it was like, of course, you know, I'm so glad there's a name for what I came to by age 10 or 11. And so I think many Jews are already secular. I believe half or more of American Jews are secular. I don't think many of them know that we exist, that there's this thing called humanistic Judaism. My goal is to just let them know. I'm not trying to talk anybody out of their faith if their faith provides them with comfort. As long as their faith doesn't impinge on our freedoms, right? So there is a line somewhere about, you know, like your freedom to move your arms only extends as far as my face, right? And so people are free to believe what they want unless it's starting to hurt other people. So the question about, are we open to non-Jews? I read that as in 2 ways. First is that everyone is welcome. And if this provides meaning to people, then I hope that we can provide it for you. And I think one of the nice things about humanistic Judaism is that it's a cultural approach. It's not a religious approach. So we maintain none of the barriers that religious Judaism maintains about who can participate. Any of this liturgy that we just are doing today, this morning, can be said by anybody. You don't have to be Jewish. Maybe not everybody who said it is Jewish. I don't know. I don't care. What I care about is that people are provided with some kind of meaning and connection and community. So absolutely, there are many people who aren't or wouldn't be recognized as officially Jewish by the other Jewish denominations who are actively participating and fully, equally participating in humanistic Judaism. And just as an aside, our board president at the Society for Humanistic Judaism, who his term just ended, so our board president emeritus, a wonderful person named Richard Logan, would not be recognized as Jewish by any other Jewish denomination because he adopted humanistic Judaism. But he spent his entire life Jew adjacent, as I like to say. He went to Harvard. Both of his roommates at Harvard were Jewish. He met his Jewish wife at Harvard. They raised Jewish children together in the Reform movement. Then he learned about humanistic Judaism, and it described exactly what his identity was, and he adopted humanistic Judaism. And for the other movements who wouldn't accept him as Jewish and wouldn't allow him to fully participate in their rituals, to me, that's their loss, because this is one of the most knowledgeable, Jewishly knowledgeable lay leader I've ever worked with, first of all, and he's just a genuine mensch. And what a shame, what a loss for the Jewish community if he had only ever heard, no, you're not Jewish, as opposed to, yes, we welcome you. So that's the one way I think about people who aren't Jewish in our movement. And then, of course, the other way is our response to intermarriage, which I feel is the strongest, best possible response, because it's completely celebratory. We celebrate intermarriage. It's not just that we tolerate it. It's not just that we allow for it or allow for some of it. We celebrate it because it means two people have found love, period. And we can stop right there. There's no buts. My wife is not Jewish. half the rabbis in our movement are intermarried. And again, this is because we come at it from a cultural perspective. When two cultures meet, there's no zero-sum game. We don't have to, my wife is from Japan. I don't have to not eat sushi and love it because I'm Jewish, right? So we do Jewish cultural activities, and I would include what we're doing today as cultural, even though it is also non-theistic religion. So that part is a little confusing. We can do all of it, and that's the beauty of intercultural marriage, which is how we see Jewish intermarriage. I learned about humanistic Judaism only 2 months ago, and I'm 75 years old. I feel like I'm now at home, and thank you so much, Sharon, because you just made my whole week by saying that. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, and I'm so glad that we got to you, that we found you. And Melody asked about, are we like ethical culture? So ethical culture, if you don't know, is a movement that was founded well over 100 years ago by a rabbi's son, who, Felix Adler, it's a fascinating story if you look it up. He was being groomed to assume his father's pulpit at Temple Emmanuel here in New York, which is actually where my wife and I got married. It's the Jewish St. Patrick's Cathedral. It is insane if you ever get to New York again, if anyone can ever travel again. Come to New York, step inside Temple Emmanuel. He was being groomed. His first sermon was about how he doesn't believe in God. And they were like, you're out. And so he founded ethical culture, and the difference was he stripped all of Jewish identity from it because he wanted it to be completely universalizing, even though many, many Jews have been involved in ethical culture even to this day. And so you lose all of that history and connection to Jewish identity and to Jewish peoplehood. And that's a piece that I think folks in our movement want to hang on to. But as far as the humanistic values, we're very much aligned, and we work closely with the ethical culture movement. And I don't know how much time I have left, but I'll just take this one more question. Do I foresee a change in the Jesus God litmus test in American politics? I do. And it's something that we're working toward at Society for Humanistic Judaism. And I'll just say that for some people, they're not here because of the politics, and Humanistic Judaism as a movement is not all about politics, it's about meaning. And so there are a variety of entryways for people to find meaning in this. But for a substantial percentage of us, the meaning is around political action, advocacy, social justice, repairing the world, tikkun olam, and so this challenge that we exist in now, where evangelical white Christian nationalism, and let's name it for what it is, and you guys are in the South, so you know it. I'm in comfy Brooklyn. We are challenging that, and so we have an initiative called Jews for a Secular Democracy. It's a pluralistic initiative of the Society for Humanistic Judaism, meaning we hope all Jews would be for a secular democracy. And we're pushing back on things like when politicians or evangelicals say that it is the Judeo-Christian values that allow us to persecute gay and lesbian people, to prevent gay and lesbian people from full equality, right? We stand for full equality for all people, and that includes LGBTQ, and we hear from those who are against that theirs is Judeo-Christian values. And what we're saying is, no, take our name out of it. Don't say that in our name. Don't say Judeo. 85% of American Jews support gay marriage. That's not a Judeo-Christian value to prevent the full equality of our gay and lesbian friends and family members. So we're working on it. It's a long road, but as I had alluded to, there are polls and statistics showing that huge numbers of Americans, rapid increase of Americans, especially younger Americans, are walking away from organized religion. It doesn't mean they're walking away from God belief or from supernatural ideas like healing crystals or whatever, but they're walking away from organized religion. And you'd think that as secular Jews, we cheer that, and maybe we do in some ways, but we're also an organized religion. So we need to make the case that that we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And there is great value and meaning in our tradition, and there's wisdom, and there's brilliant people all along who've said great stuff that we can pull from it. But it's not the only tradition we have at our fingertips as well. You know, there are many Jews who resonate with the ideas in Buddhism, and we can pull from that as well. But for me, I feel a personal connection to the Jewish history because it's my family. It's what I feel connected to. But it can be something that you've married into. It can be something that you've chosen for yourself. We all have these options and opportunities. So I thank you all again for allowing me to speak with you about this. And I'm so glad that you have chosen this option to celebrate with us and to find meaning with us. And I'm totally available to continue the conversation with any of you at a later date. Find us at shj.org. You can reach out to me by email. And again, Shana Tova, and thank you so much for having me.